David Sanger, I want to talk to you about your book, which actually is very relevant to events of the moment. And I'm just going to read two revelations from this book, really in no order of importance because they're very different. You found that Trump had made it clear he thought that Ukraine and certainly Crimea must be actually a part of Russia. He could not get his head around the idea that Ukraine was an independent state. I'm going to let that sit right there, because also given the historic events of today, you reveal in your book that Donald Trump had an obsession with Stormy Daniels and other women who he felt had wronged him, and actually burned up 45 minutes of an important meeting riffing about these women, specifically a long diatribe about Stormy Daniels, the former porn star who claimed she had an affair with him. And now there is a criminal trial starting in just about 2 hours, making it historic because it's the first former president to go on criminal trial, all revolving around election interference and a payment to that porn star he seemed to be obsessed with in a meeting. What else is in this book?
Well, what else is in it? Those two are both true. In the meeting that we're referring to was with Randall Stephenson, at the time the CEO of AT&T, who was in trying to talk to him about important change in communications networks in the U.S. It was supposed to be a classified meeting. At some point, Trump said to him, this is really boring, and went on to his discussion of Stormy Daniels. But the book is about something much larger, and something that took place long before Trump came to office. And it is basically about the revival of superpower conflict. And so I'd say the first 100, 150 pages of this book tries to examine the question, Mika, of how it was that the United States so deceived itself into believing that China and Russia, for completely separate reasons, would join Western institutions and basically run by Western rules. And then how we reacted or underreacted when that unraveled. And in the Russia case, we had plenty of warning. Putin came to the Munich Security Conference in 2007, a place that David and I and Ed have occasionally had to show up. And he railed against the parts of Russia that he believed had been wrested from the mother country after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And then 7 years later, he, of course, annexed Crimea. It took us a year to put sanctions together. And only with the big invasion of Ukraine have we really seen that take place in a big way, of a big reaction. In China's case, it's slightly different, but it was Xi Jinping where we got the intelligence wrong about what kind of leader he would be. And of course, what did he do? He came in, secretly gave a series of speeches you can read about here about building up China's nuclear force, did the repression on Hong Kong. And now we are caught with a leader who we're going to be living with for another 10 years or so. And while things have eased up in the past year, or actually I should say the past 6 months, I don't know anybody in the U.S. government who thinks that we aren't on a longer-term confrontation. So we're focused on the Middle East, rightly so, but the risk here is once again getting distracted.
David Ignatius, take the next question.
David, you've been covering the rise of this new Cold War for years and doing it superbly. I want to ask you what kind of marks you give President Biden for dealing with the issues that you raise in your book. In this newly dangerous world, how's he doing?
So he started off rough with the Afghanistan withdrawal. And obviously you saw that was where his poll numbers declined. I also think it's probably where Putin got the idea that he wouldn't respond on Ukraine. Putin got that wrong. And I detail in the book at some length, David, the discussions that took place behind the scenes in the White House as they were deciding to reveal the intelligence, send Bill Burns, the CIA director, to confront Putin and warn him about what the response would be. how Burns's arguments were kind of dismissed by Putin. I think they handled the pre-war period very well. I think they handled the arming of Ukraine well, although I think some of those arms could have gone earlier. It's only now that they are running into the blockades that they didn't see coming. And that is a Congress that is fundamentally stuck on the question of continuing the aid. And so much as Biden would like to continue his policy, if it turns out that Congress does not renew that, I think the message to the allies around the world will be, even if you have a Democrat who supported Ukraine aid in the Oval Office, it may not make that big a difference. And this is going to be the real test, I think, of American steadfastness.
White House and national security correspondent for the New York Times, David Sanger, thank you so much. His new book, out tomorrow, entitled New Cold Wars, China's Rise, Russia's Invasion, and America's Struggle to Defend the West, an important book. You can pre-order it now. David, thank you very much.
Hey, everyone. MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.